Some of my media buddies have some travel difficulties after Tuesday's ice-in, but they will be playing some basketball there at 6:50 on Thursday night. This guy here is on the other side of the fence, doing all things Musketeers for the Musketeer Report, as well as at the Cincinnati Enquirer. He covers high school sports there, but covers Xavier or Xavier or however we're going to pronounce it around here. We welcome Rick Broering onto the program. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Rick Broering, and he'll have the other side of the story, the 11 seed. What's going on, Rick? How's life out in the Midwest?
It's going pretty well. A little cold, and I will tell you, it's definitely the first way. No eggs. You don't say Xerox machine or xylophone. So the Xavier fans will get mad at you if you do that.
I know, but a bunch of people say that around here, Xavier, and I'm like, well, I mean, there's some basketball players and I think some adult actresses who had the name Xavier or Xavier at various points. Look, I say about Xavier, and anybody that's followed my career, 25 years I've been on the radio here, I bet the first 15 years, every year when a pool would come out, I would be the guy circling Xavier to go to the 4 or the 8. They were always sort of the darling little mid-major that never could, but then mid-major started to do so. But they were trying to make mid-major cool 20 years ago. It's a storied basketball program that sort of had a tough time this year with injuries and other issues off the court. And I know you chronicle it also. You know, when a Maryland fan says, Xavier, who's Xavier this year, Rick? Tell me about him.
Well, I mean, they're a team that struggled to find their identity for most of the year. I mean, even when Edmund Sumner, their point guard, was healthy, I think it was a situation where they were really good last year. The pieces fit really well together, and then you just had a couple experienced pieces leave, and now people were trying to step into new roles. So, for instance, Trayvon Blewett was still your leading scorer, but he had to shoulder a heavier load. J.P. McKira went from sixth man of the year in the Big East to now he's expected to be a starter that's reliable every single night and not just a spark plug off the bench. And then Edmund Sumner went from a freshman point guard where people are saying, does Xavier even have a point guard? Is he going to be good enough? To all of a sudden being asked to be one of the leading scorers and a first-round draft pick and one of the top point guards in the country. I think they all just struggled to get that mix, get that chemistry together. They started to find it right before Edmund got hurt. Then obviously they struggled after that. And Trayvon Blewett turned his ankle, so they struggled big time with that 6-game losing streak. Once Trayvon got healthy again towards the end of the year, they seemed to rebound. They seemed to find their identity. And right now that identity is simply toughness. They rebound well. They defend fairly well most of the time despite some deficiencies. And they just want to make it ugly at this point, I think.
Well, the Butler win gives them a little bit of juice, right? But until that point, the only team they've been better than's DePaul over the last month. And look, Maryland had their own struggles, especially at home. Maryland's been a better road team than anywhere else. And, Maryland did not show up for their hosting their own tournament last weekend. So, I mean, this is a sort of a sloppy matchup amongst teams that back in January certainly had a little bullet next to their name thinking that they were going to be top 4, 3, 4, 5 seeds instead of, certainly Xavier's fall from grace came through injury more than anything else. But, Maryland has scuffled. We don't know which Maryland team's going to show up on Thursday in Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, the Xavier fans are in a similar boat. You're right. They did go on a 6-game losing streak and hadn't beaten anyone for almost a month that wasn't named DePaul until they popped Butler in the Big East tournament. So there's no question that Xavier fans are going to be leery no matter who they're playing against. But I do think in terms of matchups, this worked out pretty well for Xavier fans, about as well as could be expected with an 11 seed.
Tell me where they are in the scope of sports in your region. I call folks out in that part of the world all the time about the Bengals and, sometimes you talk a little baseball, Reds and whatnot. Where does Xavier fit in?
I mean, it's huge. Xavier is a much smaller school than Cincinnati is in terms of their alumni base and how many people attend there. But their passion, their fan base, is much more passionate, much more active. Xavier sells out every game pretty much at the Cintas Center, where Cincinnati struggles a little bit at times to get attendance during the non-conference schedule and even during some of those AAC games, which aren't very fun to attend. So UC had a much better year this year. Fans were more excited about them. They had increased attendance. They're going to get a new arena, which will help them. But it's weird because they've kind of flip-flopped spaces. Xavier used to be, like you said, kind of that mid-major that was little brother, and Cincinnati was the big-time program in the Big East, and Xavier was in the A-10, and now they've flopped. UC went to the AAC, which is a worse A-10, basically, from what Xavier used to be in, and Xavier's now in the Big East. So they've kind of changed spots, and Xavier, as their fans feel like they're as big time as they get around here.
It's interesting, like in Philadelphia, and I talked a lot about this last year. Villanova is a Philadelphia school that no one in Philadelphia really claims. Philadelphia has all these problems winning championships, and they finally get a championship, and 7 or 8 of the other schools in the marketplace, they don't want to be any part of a Villanova parade. And I certainly know more Bearcat people. Maybe it's because of NFL ties, and John Harbaugh was a coach there at one point. Brad Jackson, other people on this side of the fence, and I know Marvin Lewis for a while out there. But it is interesting to gauge when a school does well, like Georgetown in D.C. Maryland was already in D.C., but Georgetown became that 10,000-pound gorilla for 15 or 20 years, where they had more people following them than the Bullets had at the time. I wonder what it takes in that sort of a marketplace in a city where there are pro teams, but also other beloved state institutions or other local schools that bear the name. I think it's more difficult. Here it would be about Loyola, right? Or, one of those kind of schools here to say, well, what if they were the one that put together that basketball program? But Xavier's been doing this for 30 years, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. At this point, it's 30 years. So this is a conversation that honestly, hasn't been had around here in a while. Xavier's just been big time and a major program. But like you said, a couple decades ago, this was much more of a war for Xavier fans, and they would get annoyed by all the flights and everything else in the city. And quite honestly, there's just a lot of competition for entertainment dollars around here. You mentioned the Reds and the Bengals and the Cyclones and FC Cincinnati. And then the other thing that's interesting about Cincinnati in terms of college fandom is tons of people in this greater Cincinnati area are UK fans or Ohio State fans, too.
Absolutely.
So it's not just Xavier and UC and NKU and Miami of Ohio and Dayton. It's those other big-time schools as well.
Yeah, Marvin would always tell me that he would struggle that people thought he was Tubby Smith. And on the Kentucky side, he was allowed to be Tubby on the Ohio side, but not the Kentucky side. That was the rule.
I hadn't heard that one. That's funny though.
I had it, dude. I was with Marvin one night in Louisville, Kentucky, at the well, not now maybe, but 15 years ago when he got the job. I was with him at the Kentucky Derby, and someone came up and said hi, Tubby, and wanted a picture with him, and took a picture and left, thinking they had taken a picture with Tubby Smith. And so it's become a great inside joke there. But on the basketball side, the Maryland, the draw for the Terps. When they saw they were a 6 seed, maybe you saw the video of Mark Turgeon, there was great, a great joy. And part of that is you get to skip all the 1s and the 2s because, the 1s and the 2s are kind of interchangeable to me. I don't think you want to see Duke. I don't think you want to see Louisville the first weekend. But for Maryland, the notion that getting through Xavier would land Florida State, that probably also makes Xavier and Chris Mack salivate a little bit too. That feels like, well, maybe we can survive the weekend if we can survive the first game.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious because I'm sure both Xavier fans and Maryland fans and people in both teams and the coaching staffs and everything feel that they both got a great draw. Like if I'm Xavier, I'm excited about the fact that Maryland's struggling. They're a team that's ranked 5 spots behind Xavier and KenPom. They're a very winnable game right now, I think, by anyone's standards. And then you get Florida State, who is a terrible matchup for Xavier, but at the same time, they're probably the most inconsistent 3 seed in the bracket that's had some just absolutely embarrassing losses this season, and you don't really know what you're always going to get out of that team and that coaching staff. So, look, none of the 3 seeds were going to be easy to beat, but out of the ones that either Xavier or Maryland can match up with, I think Florida State's probably the one they both wanted in terms of 3 seeds. Maybe Baylor for Xavier, but they'd already played them earlier in the year, so that wasn't going to happen. So I think that this draw in terms of both of these teams with dreams of the Sweet 16, it's about as good as you can ask for.
This guy covers Xavier sports. Don't call it Xavier. He's Rick Broering. That's Broering. You can follow him out on Twitter under his name, as well as at Inquirer Sports, where he covers high school sports, as well as covering Xavier for Musketeer Report. That's another spot if you want to learn a little bit more about the game before Thursday night down there in Orlando to do that. So, look, Maryland, here's the scouting report for you on Maryland. If they shoot the ball well, they'll win. If they get to the line and it's mellow, they'll win. If they get into foul trouble, they'll lose. And I don't see any way they're going to rebound with most of these teams. That's been the story in the Big Ten. Nights they shoot well, they win. Nights they don't buy a rebound whether they shoot well or not. When they shoot well, they don't have to rebound offensively at all. The ball goes through. But they have really struggled against big guys. That's been part of the story with Tchaikovsky. You mentioned losing a guard on your side. The Terps lost some size, lost some rotation, and really haven't been able to find their way in the paint, especially on nights when they go a little chilly.
Yeah, I've watched last night. I actually watched a lot of film of this Maryland team of their most recent games, and then went back and found some of the games where they're playing better as well. And that's what I saw. I saw a team that if they shoot well, they're going to give Xavier a lot of trouble. They'll spread Xavier's defense out. Trimble will be able to get to a free throw line. Could put Xavier's thin guard core in trouble. There's a lot of issues that could come with this Maryland Xavier game and for Xavier. But at the same time, you mentioned it. Maryland is a bad rebounding team. Xavier's identity is their toughness. They're number 36 in the country in both offensive and defensive rebounding percentage. I believe Maryland's well past the 100 mark in both categories. So that is where I see Xavier gaining an advantage. And if Maryland doesn't shoot the ball well, then I think this game really swings into Xavier's favor because they quite honestly have been used to not shooting the ball well the past few weeks, and they've found ways to win and improve despite that. And then at the same time, they have Trayvon Blewett, J.P. McKira. Both guys got hot at different points of the Big East tournament and helped carry the team. So it'll be interesting to see. With the teams being so close in a lot of areas, they're both decent offensively, kind of bad defensively. They're very close in a lot of metrics. I think this could end up being one of those star games where it's basically just, okay, everything else was even. Who ended up shooting better and scoring more points? Melo Trimble, Kevin Horter, or on the Xavier side, Trayvon Blewett, J.P. McKira?
He is Rick Broering. He's covering all things Xavier, and you can follow along. Musketeer Report. He'll be out on Twitter during the game as well at BROERING, as well as at Cincinnati. It says here on your Twitter that you're a podcaster and a steak salesman. I want to give you a free plug for whatever steak you're selling here because I do make it to Cincinnati once a year, and quite frankly, I'm tired of the flatulence the chili brings me.
Yeah, so that was an old inside joke that started earlier this year. I had picked Creighton to beat Xavier twice this year. And so a Xavier fan told me I was a hack Creighton fan and called me Rick Boring, which was just a devastating blow to my ego, obviously.
Well, the internet does this. The internet is the great equalizer here. You can only feel so good about yourself if you're on Twitter.
Yeah, it really is. And so it became a whole thing that I was a Creighton fan throughout the whole year. And then randomly I started shouting out Omaha Steaks, which, as you know, is out there in Omaha. So
Peyton Manning shouted that at one point, too, just to make that clear.
And eventually they just sent me a bunch of steaks. So it's worked out well.
Well, all right. Well, I'm coming to your house for dinner next time I come in. Hell with those hot dogs and the chili out there and the cheese and the little coney things and all that. Hey, man, good luck to the Musketeers. We certainly feel good about our draw. I'll let you know how good we feel right around 9:15 Eastern on Thursday night, right?
And rightfully so. I legitimately think this game is a 50-50 coin flip. I think the spreads will reflect that on the betting lines, and it should be a good game. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, it's great talking to you for the first time. Keep the faith out there in Cincinnati. Marvin will lead you to somewhere. I don't know. Hey, by the way, they're falling apart, right? I mean, we're looking at the Bengals saying, like, what the hell's going on there? Like, are they in rebuild? It's crazy.
I mean, the Reds are in a rebuild. The Bengals, I don't know if they have a plan anymore. Like, at this point, I think they're just giving up. I'm not real sure.
Well, look, let me say this on the Bengals, and I talked about this a lot during the year. And look, we're in a glass house here. We're 8-8, and we have our own challenges here in the Purple Kingdom. But losing veteran players, I mean, the same could be said for the Ravens when Marshall Yonda goes his way and different players leave. We've lost a lot of players, mid-round picks. You almost lost Brandon Williams last week. I mean, there was a thought about that. But, the Bengals have kept that roster together more than any other team. Really, when it comes down to it, every year I look and Pittsburgh changes out some guys, Cleveland changes out everybody, but Cincinnati, the last 5 or 6 years, it's been the same core of 15 to 18 players. At some point, that has to change, but I still look at Whitworth and Zeitler as guys that are, guys I would want on my offensive line, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I have no idea what the Bengals' plan is, unless it's just take a year off until they get through whatever they're going to do with Marvin, and then start bringing in guys with a new coach. I don't know what they're looking for out of this season, but it doesn't seem like they have a huge interest in winning games.
All right. Well, the Reds are almost here too. You'll have a chance through opening day.
That'll work much better.
Right through opening day.
Watching the team lose 100 games.
By the way, I did 30 ballparks in 30 days last year. I tell people all the time, you should go see a game in Cincinnati. That's a great
amazing ballpark.
That's a great ballpark. It's a great environment. They've the place is matured down there with all the bars and the restaurants down in that alleyway down. It's nice. It's nice. So I get to Cincinnati every year when I'm freezing my ass off. It's New Year's Eve. I've seen your fireworks over Fountain Square feels like a dozen years years in a row because we play every year in Cincinnati. But it's in summertime. It's a little different. Your part of the world, so we'll get out to Riverbend, see Buffett or something like that.
Sounds good.
Great having you on, Rick. Man. Be well, man. Rick Broering joining us from Cincinnati, as Earl Weaver used to call it, Broering, a Musketeer Report, all things Xavier. There, I didn't really mean that. I know it's Xavier. I didn't even ask him about Bino Ranson. How about that? I should have done that. Bino came from. I got to chase Bino down. No one knows more about Xavier than Bino. He was there. My guy. Go Terps. Let's go get him on Thursday night. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio Network. Very easy to find us. Nasty at WNST.net is the email address. I am a very available individual. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget, London trip is up and running. Speaking of the Ravens, we're going over to London. We got you covered. I saw people screaming about tickets this week. Sign up on our trip and meet us at the airport. Have your bag packed and make sure you have your passport. That's all you need to do. We're going to take care of things. We're going to drive you on the wrong side of the road, put you into the tube. Do it all up. It's London. It's going to be fun. I hope. I think. I know. Driving on the other side of the road is not as intimidating as it sounds. I did it last month. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.